We have that many notes, huh? Great. Just want to make sure I see what you guys got. See, and I did it myself this morning. Make sure it came out right. Okay, obviously excited about game week here, and the preparation now switches to exclusively Florida State. Openers are, exciting, and certainly there's that sense that you want to make sure you prepare your team for everything. We're going to go into an incredible environment in Tallahassee, one where, we'll have to have our football team emotionally in the right place to play in that environment. And I would tell you that, from our perspective, a team that we got a chance to see last year and earned a lot of respect for him, especially, Jordan Travis. I think the way he played against us, his toughness, his grit, he's an extremely talented offensive player, running the football, can get the ball and push it downfield to some talented wide receivers, Wilson, Helton. We don't know much about the transfer Parchment, but Wilson and Helton in particular. Corbin, a physical back. We know a lot about Lawrence. We recruited him. He's a talented running back as well. So this is an offense led by Travis and certainly Mackenzie Milton. We all know about his accolades and what he's capable of doing. So we've got to prepare for both quarterbacks, a running quarterback, and then a quarterback that can, certainly throw the football at a high level. The offensive line, much improved from last year, and I think a lot of it has to do with the continuity. They all return. We all know that, Dylan Gibbons is transferred there, and he's a solid player as well. He adds experience to their group. So, a group now that's been together, and continuity has been their biggest issue. I think now they've got some continuity on the offensive line. As you switch to defense, I think what most people would say is that, boy, they've got a lot of changes going on there. But, when you really think about it, I think the most important thing is it's the second year in Fuller's defensive structure. Coach Fuller does a great job defensively, and I think having a second year and now understanding, like when we played them, they were coming off the Miami game where they were in 3 down. And so then they come and they play us, and they're in 3 down and 4 down, and they settled in the 4 down. So this is a defense now that has settled into who they are and how they perform defensively, structure-wise. Yeah, there are some moving pieces there. There are some new players, but they're talented. But I think the thing that stands out to us is that they'll now know what they need to do and how to do it, and be prepared for it accordingly. So Coach Norvell is a winning football coach. He knows how to win. On the offensive side of the ball, he'll have his DNA all over this offense. And as I said, some very, very talented players going into as an opener on the road, very similar to what it was at Louisville, a few years back, where it was a huge game, great excitement, national TV, and we'll have to have our football team ready for that. So excited about it and excited about the challenge. With that, we'll open up the questions.
John Finneran, you're first.
Hi, Brian. I wondered a couple of questions for you. First of all, with all these grad transfers and everything that are taking place now and teams being able to remake themselves from year to year, how difficult is that for you to prepare for somebody like Florida State, which got a couple of good defensive transfers at defensive end?
Yeah, so you're preparing for structure and understanding that, obviously last year they had 2 outstanding defensive ends that were drafted, I think, in the 3rd or 4th round. So, it's plug and play, right? You expect to have a high-level player at Florida State playing that position. But I think it's much more important that, like, if we were playing an opener and didn't know what we were going to get defensively, right? Last year it was, boy, they threw everything at us. They were 3 down, they were 4 down, they were a little bit of everything. And I think going into this year, you have a better sense of how they're going to line up in terms of what their defensive structure is. So expectations are that you're going to get, well, we know a little bit about the kid from Georgia. You know, we saw him a couple years back. We know his athleticism. Kid from South Carolina, we don't, but we've seen a little bit of film on him. So we know we're going to get two really good players at the edge because that's how their defense is set.
Second question is there a rate for vaccinations going there? Have you talked with Florida State where they stand as far as their vaccination rate and where you stand? Because I heard from somebody down there that they're less than 85%, which is what the ACC wants for a game.
So our medical team has had those conversations, and they have felt like, you know, this game is on equal terms in terms of not going in there and being vulnerable. So, you know, that's not now a situation from last week's conversation relative to the vaccinations and the medical situation. It's not on my desk as a concern. So it's prepare our football team accordingly. And move forward. If it was, it would have been brought up to me.
And of course, and the final question is, what are your travel plans for this? Are you going to continue doing what you did last year, leaving late, getting there, going to the rooms, that kind of thing?
Yes, very similar. We'll have a, you know, again, we have to keep COVID as part of this. And I think, you know, to the members of the media here today, you know, I would caution everybody that there are going to be, during the season, unavailable players like we had last year where, you know, we're going to go out on the field and you're going to, where is number 26, you know, or 32 or 57? And, you know, we certainly can't comment on them, but I think you guys will be able to do what that, in fact, is. So it's still here. COVID's not gone away. You know, there's going to be those situations. So having said that and answering your question, we are still taking COVID precautions. Many of our players are in single rooms. We will not eat on the flights. We are going to leave late on Saturday and get in there at Saturday night. So I would say that are we 100% where we were last year? No, but we are hybrid and moving towards even more restrictions.
Tim Priester is next.
The injury to Leofau, just the trickle-down effect of losing him, not only at linebacker but on special teams. And do you know how it occurred in general?
Yeah, let me address that. Thanks, Tim. And I usually wait for Eric to ask his injury questions, but you jumped them, so I'll go right to it. So Maris Leofau had surgery this morning. It was successful surgery. It was a break and a dislocation, so it was, you know, a fairly significant injury. His spirits are great. You know, our medical team feels great about the recovery and his ability to come back here and be, you know, 100%.
Out for the season, or
yeah, out for the season.
Definitely out for the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's similar injury to the injury that we saw from the young man that played wide receiver from Alabama, and he came back for the championship game. Came back, quote unquote, for the championship game. So, you know, that's the length of this injury.
When I think I asked you in the spring about red zone and where you needed to improve, and to summarize, I think you said just you need to pull the trigger a little bit sooner and more definitively. Now that you've gotten into that, where do you think you are in the red zone, and how do you make improvements?
So
over
let's
last
break
year?
it down. We'll drill a little bit deeper. We were extremely efficient in the red zone running the football, probably one of the best in the country. We were not throwing it. We were 10 touchdown passes to 60 opportunities. That ranked as one of the lowest in the country. We got to throw it better in the red zone, and we have to be more effective when we do have those opportunities. So when those situations arise, we've got to catch it, we've got to throw it, we've got to be on the same page in terms of doing it. And so what I want to see more than anything else is a higher efficiency in throwing the football and maybe a little bit more balance there. We were stubborn, but we were good at it. We were good at running the football down there. But, you know, we weren't as balanced as I would like to be. So there has to be more balance, and that balance comes from throwing it more efficiently in the red zone.
Do you feel you have more targets down there?
We have more targets, and, you know, I think from an offensive structure, we'll put ourselves in a position where we'll have a little bit more balance going through it.
We've probably asked you about everybody up to this point. I don't remember a conversation about Jack Kaiser.
Yeah.
He kind of won the job in the spring and hasn't been talked about a lot, but, I mean, where do you feel he is and how confident are you in him?
You know, I think Jack's done a really good job in terms of learning the position. There's a lot of learning. That position is one where I think everybody knows a little bit more of the structure of that defensive position is that we ask him to do a lot more than just contain the football. I mean, he's got to play coverage. He's got to be involved in the run fits. And when I say play coverage, he's got to play some man-to-man. So that's a position that requires, you know, a lot. And so Jack's done a really good job of learning that position. But I think that, you know, our depth is really good at that position. Jack's done really well. Pryor has had a really good camp, as has Paul Mwala. So the question was about Jack, but I would say that all three of those guys have impressed us, and expect to see all three of them playing.
Last thing off topic, I think when we talked to you on August 7th, you were completely in support of name, image, likeness, as is the school, as is Jack Swarbrick. As a coach, what are your concerns with it?
Well, where it goes in the recruiting end of things, in terms of, you know, how it's presented to prospective student athletes. You know, obviously we don't want to go into the name, image, and likeness promising things to young men that are 17 and 18 years old that we can't deliver. And I think it's important that we look at name, image, and likeness as something that can be built on over a longer period of time than autographs or memorabilia or short-term gains. So those are kind of the two things that concern me a little bit about it, because we're navigating that for the first time going into recruiting.
Patrick Engel is next.
Brian, going further off of Marist's injury, it looks like J.D. Bertrand is going to get the first cracker at placing him at will. What kind of led to making that decision, and what you saw from him in camp to have him get that a chance?
His production, outstanding production, tough, smart, assignment correct, athletic. I mean, he has all the tools to play at a high level at that position. So, you know, we lose, you know, a very versatile player in Marist. There's no doubt about it. But J.D. Bertrand is an outstanding football player as well. So next man up in that situation. And, you know, we'll get a chance to see him play against Florida State.
And then looking at safety, Houston Griffith being listed as the starter there opposite Kyle. We've heard Marcus Freeman tell us we'll see him and DJ Brown. I'm curious how you see that kind of position playing out, even though Houston's, I guess, technically listed atop the depth chart.
Yeah, you know, I think it's pretty apparent, right? You know, where Kyle Hamilton's going to be, most people are not going to be. So that position is crucial relative to getting the ball on the ground. And so that's a tackling position for us. And so those guys have to tackle the football. They're both, you know, have had really good camps. You know, you're going to see them both playing. And they're going to be, you know, they're going to be on notice because most teams know where Hamilton is, and they're going to attack both those guys. And I think they're up for the task.
Eric Hanson is next.
Brian, Kevin Austin, just an interesting story because of his injury history and other things, just never really kind of got out of the launching pad. I'm wondering, as you face this opener with, I assume, him looking as good in practice when we're not there as when we are, what his mindset has been to get through. Because some people, you know, you break your foot a couple times, it's up here.
Yeah.
So what's his mindset been with all the both kind of self-imposed setbacks and the ones that he didn't ask for?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's a fair question to ask any, elite athlete that has had so many setbacks. And, I think he's had good days and bad days and trying to work through it. But I think the constant has been he's had great support at home. I think Dell's done a great job of staying really close with him, as he navigates, not having football. So what does that mean? How do you handle yourself in the classroom and do the right things when football's not the prime mover in your life? And I think he's had a lot of really good support around him. And then his desire to want to play here at Notre Dame. I mean, look, easy story, right? As you kind of alluded to, that, he kind of transfers and moves on somewhere else. But he wanted to do it here. He wanted to get a degree from Notre Dame, and he's had really good support at home. I think Dell's done a terrific job with him and being a great mentor. And he's been strong-minded in terms of fighting through some very difficult times to want to play for Notre Dame.
When you look at your starting offensive line, there's a lot of talented pieces there. I'm wondering how the unit part of that is coming together, especially since you planted Patterson at center.
Well, I think you start with the end in mind first, right? And that is, why'd you plant Patterson there, right? Because he can influence both guards. And so the center is able to influence, two guards that, we weren't familiar with until we got a chance to see him, and that's Kane Madden, obviously. And then we didn't know what was going to happen at left guard. It's been it's been Zeke, and certainly, Rocco's done a really good job there. Andrew Kristofic, we've had a lot of moving pieces at that position. So, JP really does a great job of helping both of those guys to work in unison. And then, you've got Josh Lugg on the right side that's got great experience, that kind of blends in there. And then you've got, Blake Fisher, who's kind of a separate entity in itself, an unusual character in itself, that he just can go in there and press play at such a young age. So that's really the thought process in terms of JP at center. He's helped those guards.
I think you alluded at some point that Isaiah Foskey had a pec injury at some point over the summer.
He did in the summer, yes.
Okay. As you've gotten closer to the season, I guess from my expectation, I thought he would take a leap this year. Have you seen that in the last couple weeks of practice?
Yes. Yeah. He's definitely feeling much more comfortable on a day-to-day basis with the defensive structure, what he's asked to do, his workload, all of those things. And, I think he continues to grow as a football player. He has not reached his ceiling. I think we all know what his physical ability is right now, and it's outstanding. But I think his football ability continues to grow, and I'm kind of excited to watch him play.
Pete Sampson is next.
You mentioned the Louisville game from a couple of years ago. What do you remember about that? As the environment was charged. The game was fairly tense for the first half, and you guys sort of figured it out on the fly. Like, what are the keys to doing that in an opener? What lessons can you take from that might be applicable on Sunday?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. So that was a group that was similar to this. There was a mix of some veterans and some young players. Core was playing for his first time. You can think of some of the guys. Alohi's out there for the first time. So there's a lot of new guys, but some veteran guys mixed in. And we're trying to handle the environment, and figure that out, as well as execute at a higher level. And we didn't tackle very well, if you remember, in the first half. And that was really the story of the game. We played much better defense and then kind of settled down on offense, and that changed the flow of the game. And we'll need to start a little bit better. I think we'll handle the environment better as well, because we have more players that have played at Louisville, that have played at Georgia, that have played at Virginia Tech, that have used their voice to talk to players about how they get into the right zone. So I think there's some similarities there that we've already kind of touched upon over the past few weeks.
And you say like settling down, like you can say it, but like the players have to do it. So like how do you sort of get that point across without adding anxiety to the situation?
Yeah, so, we address it prior to, we show them what it's gonna be like at Florida State and present to them, all right, where are you going to be when that horse runs out on the field mentally? Where are you going to be with all of that excitement and the chop and all that? You've got to get into, your optimal zone. And so, we've spent, a few team meetings already on loud videos and showing them the entrance and the tight locker room and, how difficult it is in that environment so they can prepare themselves to put themselves. Look, the number one thing to peak performance is distractions. So getting those distractions out of the way so they can meet their peak performance.
Changing gears just for an offensive personnel set, like as an offensive guy, like 21 personnel, like what do you like about it? What challenges does it create? Not a lot of people do it, but not a lot of people sort of have the personnel that you do right now.
Well, 21 personnel can be looked at in two different ways. What's that second back? Is he a fullback or is he another halfback? Florida State uses 21 personnel, but they're using really two backs, and the same would be for us, right? We're getting Mike Mayer on the field with Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree. We like that because we're putting three dynamic players on the field. So at times when 21 is thought of, it's kind of an old-fashioned connotation about a pro-style offense. But in fact, it's putting another playmaker on the field for us that we can move around into different formation sets. So 21 breaks out for us into no back. It breaks out into 11 personnel because of the multiplicity that we have with one in particular, a Kyron Williams that can move around quite a bit. Yeah.
Pete Byrne is next.
Hey, Brian, I was going to ask about the environment. Pete just talked about that. I'm curious, is the heat down there a concern at all?
Not the way it's been here. We could invite them up here, and it would be fine. Yeah, we've been well conditioned in the heat and the elements here during, a 6 or 7 day period where, we weren't even allowed to tackle on 2 of those days because of the heat index. So I think we're well prepared, well conditioned for the environment relative to the weather. And we're playing at night, so the sun won't be on us, which will be another factor that will be helpful. It'll be managing, going on the road, the distractions, as I said earlier, eliminating distractions, getting into your, the right zone that you need to be in to handle one play at a time, focus, and then refocus.
Excuse me, Marcus told us that he likes to be on the field for game days, Marcus Freeman.
He does.
What have you guys done to simulate just how he's going to call plays and how the whole process will go, since it's new to you guys how he does it?
Well, we had spring ball, so we had our spring game, so we went through that operation and how we wanted that. And then this past Saturday, we had a full bench control scrimmage for the nuances of play calling and, signaling and all the things that go along with, what a game day management should look like. So headphones, things of that nature. So I think we feel pretty comfortable with the management of the sideline, communication from the box, all the things that you're asking about. I think we feel pretty comfortable.
Tyler James is up next.
Brian, we've asked you plenty of questions about the quarterbacks and the receivers throughout the preseason and less about the running game, which I imagine probably isn't necessarily reflective of what that's going to look like during the season. How have you seen the running game developed this preseason? Can it be as dominant as it was last year, and how can it be different?
Yeah, so the running game can be different, and I think it can be extremely effective and efficient. So, you start with personnel. I think we're getting much more comfortable with, the personnel up front on the offensive line. We lost some really good players, but I think, we're getting to the point where we're feeling more comfortable with how that group is working together. I think we've been very careful not to do too much, but yet have a great library of answers to what defenses may do. So that efficiency in terms of selection of plays have been repped and repped and repped. And then I think the maturity of the backs, in particular the two veterans. And when I say veterans, you know, I use that word loosely. They're still young, but Kyron and Chris. And then, you know, Sebo is an outstanding back that just is in a crowded room, but he is demanded carries by his play. You know, I really like what the two freshmen have done. So I think we got really good depth there. I think it's a talented room. And I think the offensive line, we've been very, I think, detailed in making sure that we're going to do what we're good at up front.
Will this offense be defined by how successful the running game is?
Well, I mean, I think everybody kind of looks at the running game as part of, you know, your success. You know, we're going to have to run the football. There's no doubt. I mean, I think, you know, balance to me has always been about, you know, if you're in a position to run it, you better be good at it. And, but defined to me is about scoring points, and scoring more is going to be having an effective and efficient running game.
And then last week, some comments that you made at a golf outing about Marcus Freeman being the next head coach sort of came out. I want to give you a chance to clarify what you meant by that.
Well, we were talking about race, so we weren't talking about Notre Dame at all. So, you know, it's like anything else. You know, somebody took the comments and inserted Notre Dame in it, and it had nothing to do with Notre Dame. We were talking about, you know, giving qualified people, in particular African American and Black leaders, the opportunity to lead, and I've done that in my football program with Director of Operations. I think I alluded to that. And then, you know, we were talking about coaches, and I said the next head coach will be Marcus Freeman, you know, and that got taken as the next head coach at Notre Dame. But that was never part of the equation. I was talking about him being the next Black head coach in terms of that will be the next head coach that is Black in the country. But, you know, it's just one of those things. You're on a golf course and you're talking about race in America, and everybody else thought I was talking about Notre Dame football. So it is what it is. Thanks.
Tyler Horka.
I don't know if I clarified it any, because I think it's still going to be taken as, oh, he must have been thinking that he's the next head coach. But if you think about it, why would somebody ask me, hey, who's going to be the next head coach? I'd be pretty offended.
Tyler Horka, you're next.
Brian, at the beginning of camp, you said that this leadership group that you have on this team is as good as any that you've had at Notre Dame. I'm just curious, throughout camp and since you've made that statement, what are some ways that you've seen them kind of prove that to be true?
Yeah, so, you know, I just think in the way they handle themselves when we throw them a curve or do something that's not part of the routine, you know, changing the schedule up. Look, it's easy for everybody in the locker room to start mumbling and grumbling, hey, why are we doing this? Why is Coach doing this? They're just a great voice to go, look, relax, okay? This is why we're doing this, and this is what Coach is doing, all right? That's why we're going today, because he's given us a couple of days off here. And so they've just been really good at communicating and clearing up any squabbles in the sandbox, if you will. And they're just really good at that. And so we've got a good communication system down where they'll come to me and say, Coach, what do you think of this? Can we make this adjustment? So I just think what I've asked them to do is be, you know, great communicators, and they've really done a nice job with it.
And then lastly, it seemed like all summer and then that first week of camp, it was Jack Cohn, Jack Cohn, Jack Cohn. Since he was named the starter, haven't really talked much about him. What have you seen from him since he was named the starter, and how comfortable are you walking into Florida State with him as your number one guy?
Jack Cohn, Jack Cohn, Jack Cohn, Jack Cohn. I mean, he's been really good. I mean, he's been what he has been. That's the nice part about it, right, is that he's the same guy every day. Like, you don't go to practice and go, who's that guy? Like, he is so consistent in terms of who he is and his makeup his preparation. I think he's even improved since the spring in a number of the more detailed areas that we've asked him to. And I think that's the mark of a very good quarterback.
And we'll wrap it up with Angelo DiCarlo.
Playing off of that, how much does it help having a veteran like that in an environment like this versus the alternative of going with someone with no experience at quarterback?
Yeah, like 25, games that he's been in the Big Ten. He's been in some big games. Certainly, he's going to go out there and he's been in this environment before. That doesn't mean he's not going to have some jitters, but he's going to know how to get into that zone that I talked about earlier. That's going to help him execute and deliver a high performance when it's needed, right? And so it's very helpful.
Any limitations with Tommy Reese in terms of this week, or will he be good to go once you get to Sunday?
I think most of the limitations were last week. He's feeling pretty good. I think, as it stands right now, we're off today. We'll do a little bit of work on the field tomorrow, which is kind of our Monday. And then I think he's feeling, from what Dr. Leiser has relayed to us, that he's good to go.
And then finally for me, you mentioned Dylan Gibbons earlier. Can you just talk about what he meant to the program while he was here and how difficult it is in your first game to go up against a team that'll feature one of your former players? Yeah,
we've had that before. And we've wished Dylan the best, and, he was a hardworking guy for us. But once they kick it off, it's all about Notre Dame.
Thanks, Coach.
Guys. Appreciate it.